Okay, so get this. Bugsy Prime, back in action, and he's breaking out the Kamen Rider silver suit. Remember how much you love when supernatural stories bump into, like, superhero stuff?
Yeah, this is going to be good.
This is wild. It totally changes how we see Bugsy Prime. He's not just the calm leader of the Middleman Institute anymore. Now there's this whole other side to him, maybe even a whole lineage we haven't uncovered yet.
I know, right? And you know the Dark Carnival is going on this year. It's insane. More creatures, more chaos, and get this, for the first time ever, humans are invited.
Humans at the Dark Carnival. That's asking for trouble, especially with those rumblings Bugsy V was talking about. This double Zeta Breaker omniverse thing you found. It sounds like it could make the usual supernatural stuff look like, well, nothing. Okay, let's back up a sec, because I know you're all about vampire lore. So this year's Dark Carnival has a dedicated vampire bar. And guess who's running it? Bugsy V, Chaos Lord turned vampire.
A vampire bar at the Dark Carnival.
That's interesting. It feels like things are changing, like the different supernatural groups are trying to get along better, maybe even changing how they see themselves.
And remember how you always say you like vampires who are different, who challenge the stereotypes? Well, Bugsy V calls his bar a clean establishment. He's got a no feeding on humans rule, and apparently he'd rather have Donnie's ravioli than blood these days.
It really makes you rethink the whole traditional vampire thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're not all predators. This focus on keeping things, well, clean and coexisting. It's a different way of looking at vampires. It fits with what you like, challenging expectations and all. Speaking of challenging expectations, we have to talk about Bugsy V and Alucard. We're talking about Dracula here, and Bugsy V even admitted to being kind of freaked out by him.
It shows you there's still a hierarchy in the vampire world.
Mm-hmm.
Even someone as powerful as Bugsy V still has to respect Alucard. Or maybe it's more like fear than respect. It's different from the usual power struggles you see.
Totally. And remember Bugsy Epsilon? He basically told Alucard, nah, I'm good, when Alucard asked him to join up. He chose a normal life with Sarah's Victoria and their kid, Elizabeth.
And that says a lot, don't you think? It means they have free will, even with these ancient, super powerful beings around. The Bugsies might have these incredible abilities, but they're not puppets. They get to choose, even if it means walking away from power.
But getting back to Bugsy V, the guy definitely has a thing for powerful women. He's with Lady Dimitrescu from that video game, and Missy, who's a total badass herself.
And it's so interesting how that works. Lady Dimitrescu actually gave Bugsy V permission to have multiple wives. That's not something you see every day, right? It kind of flips the usual power dynamic on its head.
Definitely. And Missy, wow. Remember how you were asking about how female characters are breaking the mold in vampire stories? Well, this ancient vampire duke turned Missy, but when he tried to make a move, she basically said nope, took his scepter, which he'd stolen from an even older vampire, and left him in the dust. Talk about a power move.
It shows you these women have agency, especially in a world that's usually all about the men. They're not just there for romance or to be sidekicks. They can hold their own.
And they definitely make Bugsy V's life a lot more interesting, which, knowing him, might be the scariest thing of all.
Especially with those evil-ass entities he warned Bugsy Prime about. If those things have Bugsy V on edge, you know it's serious.
Which brings us back to Kamen Rider Silver. What do you think about Bugsy Prime suiting up again after all this time? I mean, we've seen him handle some crazy stuff, but this feels different.
It makes you think this threat is something else entirely. It's not just another supernatural being or some dimensional rift. This is big.
Yeah.
It's making Bugsy Prime use a power he's kept hidden, maybe for a reason.
And Bugsy V made it clear that if things went bad, they needed to call for backup. What if that backup is the Bugsy Council? You don't just casually mention a Bugsy Council and not have it be a big deal, right?
You're right, that's not just a random detail. They're overseeing multiple universes, maybe even different timelines. That means they must have some serious knowledge. They could be the key to understanding Bugsy Prime's past as Kamen Rider Silver and these new threats.
It's like they're the guardians of all the Bugsyverse secrets. And with all this talk about rumblings and loose cannons like Stormfront running around, it feels like those secrets are about to come out.
Absolutely. And remember how curious you were about where the Bugsies came from? Well, Bugsy V mentioned having Reaper blood. That's got to be connected to their power somehow, right? Maybe it's why they live so long or can cheat death.
Hold on, Reaper blood. That sounds like a whole other deep dive waiting to happen.
Right. It feels like we're talking about some ancient lineage, something older and more powerful than we can imagine. maybe even connected to the very things they're up against now.
All right, before we go full conspiracy theory here, let's focus on the dark carnival. We've got vampires, werewolves, who knows what else all hanging out together.
And for the first time, humans are invited to the party. It's a huge social experiment, but also a recipe for disaster. Remember how you wondered if the Dark Carnival itself could become a target? With all this instability between dimensions, it could definitely happen.
And if that's the case, Bugsy Prime and the gang are going to have their hands full. Talk about a party crashing on a cosmic scale.
Exactly. And with the double Zeta Breaker Omniverse hanging in the balance, the stakes have never been higher for the Bugsyverse. It's more like a concept, really. It's like the glue holding all the universes in the Bugsyverse together. Not just a bunch of parallel worlds, you know. It's more like this crazy system where universes can, like, crash into each other or bleed into each other.
Okay, so less about actually traveling between universes and more like those universes bumping into each other and causing ripples everywhere. Like, if you dropped a Mentos into a bottle of soda in one universe, you might get a sticky situation in another one.
That's one way to put it. A bit messy, but I get what you mean. Those rumblings Bugsy V talked about could be like tremors from all those dimensions. Maybe a sign that this double Zeta Breaker Omniverse thing is becoming unstable.
Which would explain why even Bugsy V is worried. This isn't just about some rogue vampire or a magical oops. This is about, like, reality itself falling apart.
Exactly. And that's where Bugsy Prime, as Kamen Rider Silver, gets really interesting. We don't know much about that part of him, but if those powers only come out when things get really weird between dimensions, well, maybe he's not just a fighter. Maybe he's like a protector, guarding the whole Bugsyverse from falling apart.
Whoa, okay, we're talking serious cosmic superhero stuff now. No pressure, Bugsy Prime. But wait, where does Stormfront fit into all of this? That wayward stormtrooper you mentioned? Is he another symptom of these dimensional tremors or what?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? He could be totally unrelated to all of this, or he could be the one making things worse, messing with the balance, pushing the double Zeta Breaker Omniverse closer to the edge.
So either he's along for the ride, or he's the one who messed everything up in the first place. Sounds about right for the Bugsyverse.
Pretty much. But let's not forget about the Bugsy Council. They're the ones with the big picture view, the most experience with this kind of interdimensional weirdness.
Right. They're like the keepers of the Bugsyverse secrets. Except instead of dusty books, they're dealing with, like, infinite realities and timelines. If anyone knows what's going on, it's got to be them.
If they're willing to share, that is. Don't forget they're looking out for the whole multiverse. That might not always mean helping out individual Bugsies, even Bugsy Prime or Bugsy V.
Okay, so maybe they're not exactly on speed dial. They're playing a much longer game here.
Exactly. And thinking long-term like that, it might be the key to understanding what's happening at the Dark Carnival. Remember how you were saying that the Dark Carnival is like a miniature version of the whole Bugsyverse? All those different factions forced to get along in one place.
Yeah, and now humans are part of the mix. Things are about to get interesting.
Exactly. And if this double Zeta Breaker Omniverse is as shaky as we think it is, the Dark Carnival, with all its magic and different beings, it could be a focal point, like
Yeah.
a weak spot where the walls between dimensions are really thin.
Whoa. So not just a party, but maybe a gateway to other dimensions.
It's definitely possible. And let's not forget about Bugsy Prime's history with the Helsing organization. They've dealt with their fair share of ancient threats, keeping the supernatural world in check.
Right. Good point. So we've got the Helsing organization, the Bugsy Council, who knows who else, all maybe fighting for control as these dimensional tremors get worse. This is getting complicated.
And in the middle of it all is Bugsy V, running his vampire bar, trying to keep things cool, and maybe sneak in a plate of ravioli while everything around him is going crazy.
You know, for a guy who loves chaos, Bugsy V always seems to be where the action is. Like, he's a magnet for trouble.
Or maybe, and this is just a thought, he's drawn to chaos. Like he can sense those big forces at play. He was a Chaos Lord before he was a vampire.
Right.
Maybe some things never change.
That's actually a really interesting idea. What if Bugsy V's thing for chaos isn't just a personality quirk, but like a deeper connection to the Bugsyverse itself?
It makes you think, right?
Yeah.
It would explain why he can be so unpredictable. He loves chaos, but he's also fiercely protective of the people he cares about. He'll face down anything, even things that scare him, to keep them safe.
Like standing up to Alucard, even if it was just to say, hey, I'm doing my own thing.
Exactly. There's more to him than we realize. He might be a vampire running a bar, but his story, just like the double Zeta Breaker Omniverse, is way more complicated than it looks.
And we can't forget about that Reaper blood thing. You know how much you love those stories about secret lineages and ancient powers, right? This one's got me hooked.
It should. It's a huge clue, especially with how the Bugsies are. They're practically invincible, maybe even immortal in some way. Could Reaper blood be the reason they're so special?
Maybe. And think about it. Bugsy V just casually mentioned it, like everybody knows about Reaper blood. Makes you wonder what other secrets are just normal stuff in the Bugsyverse.
Exactly. It's like there's this whole history, all these stories and legends, and we've only seen a tiny bit. It makes figuring out where the Bugsies came from even more interesting.
It's like we're putting a puzzle together, but every time we find a piece, a whole new part of the puzzle appears.
That's a good way to put it. That's the
Yeah.
best part of this, right?
Hey.
The journey's as fun as the destination.
Totally. And speaking of journeys, we haven't even talked about Bugsy Prime's time as Kamen Rider Silver. Feels like another rabbit hole to jump into.
For sure. It's a thread that could unravel a lot, not just about Bugsy Prime's past,
Yeah.
but about what he's up against right now.
Right. What if those evil-ass entities Bugsy V mentioned are connected to Kamen Rider Silver? Maybe they're old enemies that everyone thought were gone, but they came back now that the double Zeta Breaker Omniverse is weak.
Could be. And if that's true, then Bugsy Prime's experience as Kamen Rider Silver might be the only thing that can stop them. He could be the only one with the knowledge, the power to fight whatever's coming.
Okay, so not just a cool superhero costume, but maybe the key to saving the entire Bugsyverse. Bugsy Prime's got a lot on his shoulders.
The stakes just got higher. And it makes his decision to go to the Dark Carnival even more interesting. A place crawling with supernatural beings, and now humans too. That's brave.
It's like walking into a trap. He's either incredibly brave, incredibly stupid, or he really, really loves that ravioli.
Probably a little bit of all three.
Yeah.
But honestly, it feels like he's confident, like it's destiny. We haven't seen him like this before.
Like he knows something we don't. Or maybe he's just winging it, hoping his powers and his friends and family will pull him through.
Knowing the Bugsies. Totally possible. They might not always get along. They might have their own stuff going on. But when things get rough, they have each other's backs.
Family first, even when your family includes interdimensional vampire bartenders and chaos-loving superheroes.
Exactly. That bond, that loyalty, might be the strongest thing in the Bugsyverse. Stronger than magic, stronger than anything.
Because when it comes down to it, it's about connections, right? The ones we make, the choices we make, the people we stick with, even when everything's going crazy around us.
Well said. So, as the Dark Carnival gets ready for one wild night, we'll leave you with this. What other secrets are hiding in the Bugsyverse? What will Bugsy Prime find when he puts that Kamen Rider Silver suit back on? And what are those evil-ass entities gonna do?
Only one way to find out. But one thing's for sure, the Bugsyverse never disappoints, so keep listening, keep exploring, and remember, the truth is out there, somewhere between the ravioli and the dimensional rifts.
Until next time.
See ya.